Assalamu alaikum. Hello and welcome. My name is Nur al-Huda, and you are listening to my review of the audiobook of Kelsey Grammer's Karen, A Brother Remembers. This is a genre-bending memoir that packs a lot of divergent material in a stream of consciousness style of writing. The audiobook was released by Harper Focus in May 2025 and is 14 hours and 3 minutes long. I listened to it while driving, gardening, and cooking, stopping at some tough moments narrated therein. Throughout the summer, Grammer gave a lot of interviews as part of the press tour to promote this book. He spoke to Diane Sawyer and Tamron Hall and the panel from The View, and via video link joined Michelle Martin for PBS's Amanpour and Company, and Anderson Cooper for his new series All There Is on CNN. Interestingly, Rob Lowe, Billy Bush, Graham Bensinger had him on their YouTube channels. Leonard Picker asked him questions for Publishers Weekly. BW gave the memoir a starred review. People magazine, New York Post, and other news sites such as The Times on Sunday and The Australian have featured him too. I'm sure there are other interviews, but these are the ones that I watched and read. In most of these interviews, Grammer has said that he approached the book inspired by James Joyce's narrative technique. Hence, what you get as a listener is an unfiltered, go-with-the-flow, fragmented and at times hyperbolic monologue in Grammer's amazingly soothing, confident acting voice. There's fond nostalgia, anecdotes on Grammer's ancestors, mom, Gam, grandpa, his cousins, his flings, loves and marriages, what they all mean to him, the values he wants his 7 children to have. His 8th was born after the book was published. His professional journey and career advancement through the decades is noted, as well as stories of death, accidents, and murder in the family. Sprinkled in between are his thoughts on religion, spirituality, psychic phenomena, as well as his opinion on abortion, death penalty, and parole hearings for murder convicts. Chick-fil-A's grilled chicken nuggets make an appearance, and yes, his 18-year-old sister Karen's life is eulogized in dignified pain and justified anger. Grammer makes it a point to remember every insignificant moment that he had with her to counter the horrific significance of her death. The audiobook serves as much as a 70-year-old Grammer's Memento Mori, that is an object kept as a reminder of inevitability of death, as much as it is on the joy of life, by honoring the threads that connect him and his sister with his extended family. It's a true crime book and an allegory on grief, with enough stardust to keep you interested and enough random verbosity to make you irritated. I love Kelsey Grammer and Frasier. I first read about his sister's murder way back in the 90s, probably in People's Magazine, when Frasier first started airing. Karen Eliza Grammer was born on 15th July 1956 in New Jersey to Alan and Sally, and was raised by Sally, Gam, and Grandpa Gordon. She was just another teenage girl living it up in 70s America. She had completed high school, she had a boyfriend, an apartment, a job. Grammer successfully brings out how normal, average, and cool his sister was. Yes, there are adjectives and superlatives, but there is also heart and a human being at the center of it. Grammer calls her, quote, the true child of 60s, unquote, on the 12th mark of chapter 26. In the same chapter, at the 1741 mark of a 20-minute 30-second chapter, he describes her as, quote, an Oreo cookie dipped in ice-cold Coca-Cola, unquote. However, Grammer is limited in recounting his sister's life because of the refusal of her 2 best friends to be part of this project. He doesn't give the reason as to why they refused, whether it was small money quote or his celebrity status, or their need for privacy or something else. He does not say. And so he has had to rely on his spurts of memory and her college roommate to fill in the gaps of what she was like in life and college with friends and boyfriends. What you are left with is a feeling of what could or would have been. This book is the ultimate victim impact statement, and also the ultimate biography for a young, seemingly unremarkable victim whose true strength is revealed in her last moments, when she didn't give up, despite bleeding profusely. She could have been any one of us. She had the misfortune of being kidnapped by strangers who proceeded to have their way with her. Just the bare minimum of facts are enough to chill a listener to his or her bone. Grammer narrates the inevitable at the 7% mark of the audiobook, in the 49-minute-long chapter, that is chapter 3, titled Then. She was weeks away from her 19th birthday. The passage that I'm reading is 1 minute and 29 seconds long. It's the first paragraph of chapter 3. Quote, Karen approached 3 men entering the back of a Red Lobster restaurant. She had come to pick up her paycheck before heading out to the mountains for the 4th of July weekend. The 3 men had come to rob the place. There had been several murders in Colorado Springs that summer. These men were responsible. Karen had no idea who they were. She asked them what they were up to, but I'm fairly certain she discerned quickly what suddenly faced her: destruction. The story I was told by District Attorney and others involved in the arrest of these men has never really been clear. I think they hoped to spare my feelings, to keep the horror of what had actually happened from me. I appreciate that, and I accept their reasons for being vague. The specific details of her suffering were kept from me, but some information had to be offered. Conjecture of what she suffered is probably just as brutal as the reality. My imaginings paint the worst picture. But this is Karen's tragedy, not mine. Yes, I offered that perspective earlier, but this tragedy is Karen's triumph as well. Her strength that evening is unfathomable. Her dignity stands forever an inspiration to me. What I have endured is nothing by comparison, but it was enough for me, enough to hollow me in the journey of life and love and joy for a long time. I could not forgive myself. Unquote. Grammer further says that at the time of the abduction, Red Lobster Restaurant had a rule that employees could not stay or wait inside the venue, and that's why Karen had to stand outside. Grammer says this rule makes no sense to him. It doesn't to me either. I think he mentions that after Karen's murder, this rule was changed, but I'm not sure. She worked in the kitchen and was waiting for her boyfriend to pick her up. She was by her friend's car in the back alley. Grammer continues. This passage is also from chapter 3. It's time-coded at 0135 to 2:17. Quote, The men abducted Karen. They held her hostage for several hours. The district attorney told me Karen negotiated with them for her life. She would do whatever they asked if they spared her. I'm not sure she laid it out like that. Perhaps she implied she hoped they would spare her. I'm sure by the time they took her to the apartment where she was raped and tortured by them, Karen understood that her life was at stake. I have thought for years at her heart in that moment, how it must have been beating. Not like a rabbit's frozen in terror before a wolf, but increased and urgent and calculating as she tried to offer them a way out of killing her. Karen was always the brave one. Karen could even stand up to my grandmother. Unquote. Should Grammer have focused a bit more on the horrific, cold, cruel, torturous, vicious murder? I don't know the answer to that, but what he reveals is still bone-chilling, a terror to listen to. A summary of what he goes on to narrate is that Karen was put down on her knees, she was violated, punched, beaten, blindfolded with blue scarf, that Freddie Glenn ties her hands, raped her, sodomized her. They took their turns. There was a discussion on what to do with Karen. They openly discussed killing her. Now this is when Grammer actually says that he contacted a medium, and that medium told him that she had been taken out before death. Then Grammer says that when Karen was in the back Of the car with two of them, Michael Corbett was not there, and Karen escaped from the car for the mobile homes. As he puts it, she escaped briefly. Karen Grammer took 42 stab wounds, and Grammer says that 7 wounds were sufficient to kill her. Each one could have been fatal. Freddie Glenn is said to have slashed her throat, almost decapitating her. She staggered across the street few hundred yards away. She crawled to a trailer. The man in the trailer found her. The paramedics tried to revive her, and they could not. For context, Michael Corbett, Larry Dunn, and Freddie Glenn were spree killers responsible for 3 grisly murders in and around Colorado Springs, Colorado in 1975. Corbett and Dunn were soldiers. Freddie Glenn was a civilian employee at a Colorado Army base. All 3 were young men. Of these 3, Dunn got full immunity to testify against the other 2. Corbett died in prison. Freddie Glenn gets a parole hearing every few years. More on that later. Grammer is an openly conservative Republican, and there are important opinions expressed here, such as his feelings about death penalty and abortion. Unfortunately, his views on these subjects made more news during his book promotion tour than his sister or the nature of grief and coping mechanisms. In Chapter 4, which is a 44 minutes long chapter, that is at the 21-minute mark, approximately 50-second long passage, Grammer speaks about parole hearings and death penalty as follows.
Freddie Glenn said he was a good kid. So I wonder what happened to him that somewhere in his life he had the effrontery and self-loathing to plunge a knife 42 times into Karen's body. Over and over again, his hatred stabbed into her after he and his friends had raped her. More than once. And there was more. Some good kid. And now, whenever he appears for parole, his protestations are never about how he longs to do something good for the world, or how he wishes he could take it all back. According to Mr. Glenn, as far as I can tell, he's been in jail long enough. Just a good kid who somehow ended up in prison for a murder that doesn't quite merit the rest of his life incarcerated.
He goes on to say, at the 22-minute mark till 23:05-minute mark,
we were the good kids. Karen was the good kid. This man was an executioner, without any law to guide him, no decency at all, and no humanity. As I spent the next months and years trying to figure out how to go on, he spent them hoping he could get out, not be held accountable. He and his friend actually pleaded not guilty, and would have us believe to this day that it was just a slip-up, when it was actually a vicious, premeditated assassination and destruction of my 18-year-old sister. Letting her live would have threatened the freedom of his friends and himself, so they happily performed desecration of an innocent girl for what was to be an extra month of freedom, before they were sent to die in prison. Freddie Glenn received the death penalty for his crime. During the Carter administration, the Colorado Supreme Court agreed to review all death penalty cases, and so his sentence was commuted to life in prison. He owes his life for what he did. He owes 42 lifetimes for every stab wound he punched into my sister. My opinion.
So listening to this audiobook, it was a challenge because of all the emotion that just comes pouring out. And Grammer is not a fan of the parole hearings he has to attend every 5 years or so to make sure Glenn doesn't get out. Moving on, there are 2 abortions mentioned in the book. This also made news. One abortion occurs very early on in Grammer's dating life, when he was in his early 20s, and he expresses he left the choice to the girlfriend. The baby was a son. He says he's remorseful over it. The second abortion that he recounts is that with his current wife, his 4th, Kate. They lost one half of their unborn twins when one baby's sac ruptured at 13 weeks. This is mentioned in Chapter 23. The baby's sac did not heal naturally, and Grammer and his wife had to make the difficult decision to abort the baby, a fetus, a son, to keep the other twin, a daughter, alive. Chapter 23 is a 14 minutes 35 seconds long chapter. As Grammer says at the beginning of chapter 23, from 32 seconds to 109 minutes. Quote, "We begged God to spare us this tragic choice, but sometimes we are asked to play God. So a needle through Kate's belly into his heart killed him. We killed him. We killed our son so Faith might live. We wept as we watched his heart stop, saw it. It's the greatest pain I have known. Kate's scream was enough to make a man mourn a lifetime, another lifetime. Mom's scream when she learnt of Karen's murder." Unquote. I like the stream of consciousness style of writing that he adopted for this project, but this book needed a strong editor who could gently tell Grammer to pipe it down a bit when he goes off on tangents, drifting off into a time he wants to memorialize for himself and not for his sister or the listener. For example, while waiting around Barry College, Karen's college, he eats Chick-fil-A's grilled nuggets for the first time in his life, as a 68-year-old. His verdict? Not bad. Frankly, would we even care about this opinion on Chick-fil-A's grilled nuggets if he was not Frasier? Maybe his age plays a role. He's 70 years old after all, and maybe that makes him more susceptible to look back and reminisce about anything and everything, to purge and create a historical record, no matter how insignificant it may be to a probable audience. In this regard, the 1 minute 30-second short Chapter 7, A Letter to the Reader, works as his disclaimer for these excursions. In Chapter 15, he says he has several pictures of Karen in his home, that he sees her every day. At the 20:09 mark, he says, quote, "Last night it seemed her presence was clearly with us, and it seemed she wanted us to know something that might surprise me. Pothead, maybe. Not earth-shaking or any cause for shame. Makes sense. I see her reaching for that candy. Karen is coming into our realm. I'm not crazy. Perhaps I'm a little foolish, or a bit too willing to believe I'm in touch with her, but I have spent a lifetime with Karen, and I would know. Haven't heard the sound of her voice as I long to, but she was definitely around last night. It was a warm and enjoyable evening, with her and my kids and Kate. There was love, and there was a bit of mischief. Karen. Yeah, that was Karen." Unquote. The book is peppered with these sorts of manifestations of grief. For example, how it fractured his personality and relationships, how it contributed to his drug and alcohol use, how he wants to capture the vicissitudes of his sister's brief experience in life by visiting her college, which she left after a semester to be with her boyfriend John. He visits her last apartment, the ground floor apartment she shared with her boyfriend, and he goes to her last place of work, the Red Lobster Restaurant that she was kidnapped from, which is now a pawn shop. He did not go to the address where she was eventually murdered because he didn't note down the address for the trip, as he reveals in Chapter 26. In these passages, he is as much a ghost as he is a narrator, grieving all the adventures, mundane and iconic, that he got to have without her by his side. Like I said, I love Kelsey Grammer and Frasier. I love his work. He has an amazing voice which is put to good use here, like elsewhere, and I wish him all the best. This is part of my summer 2025 recommendations. Thank you to the publisher for the ARC, and thank you for listening.